I was just getting some of my hunting equipment ready for this season. We're getting pretty close now, and I thought this would be a great time to explain why I hunt and the good of it and the downside to some of it. And like most things, it's complicated. And I think most of the things in our lives are complicated because everything we do affects other areas of our life. But anyway, in this case, to better understand the good and the bad of what I do, I wanted to start by explaining a concept called keystone habits. All right, that was a term coined by Charles Duhigg, and basically it's just there are certain habits that once you develop those habits, they help you in every other part of your life. Exercise is a great example of that. If you exercise regularly and you're in good shape, that gives you more energy, you're better able to focus, you feel better, you're more energetic. Just it helps you in every other thing you do. All right, so there's just huge positive benefits there. So there's certain foundational habits that help you in every part of your life. All right, well, for me, there's certain activities that help you in every part of your life. Okay, and I call those keystone activities. And before I get too much into that, I want to touch on something else, and that's also understanding your priorities. Okay, and I didn't understand this till a couple of years ago, but I keep a to-do list for every week. And I do it in Excel, and it really helps me stay focused on what I'm doing and getting things done. Well, 2 years ago, 3 years ago sometime, I remember hearing about the importance of defining what your priorities are. Not just your goals, but your priorities. What is important to you in life? All right, so I made a list of my priorities, and my priorities were first, God, or you could think of it as being a moral person. My second priority was health. My third priority was personal finances, managing my personal finances. Then I had some more priorities after that. Quality of life was being one of them because, that's important too, just to have a good quality of life. Well, anyway, one New Year, I was reviewing everything I'd done the year before because I'd had 52 different to-do lists. I keep my to-do list by the week. And whenever I finish something, I'll put it in the finished column. And at the end of the year, I found out it's really nice to look back at the past year and see everything I'd accomplished that year. So I wasn't just wondering, okay, where did that year go? What did I get done? I could go back and see what I got done. And when I was going back and looking at everything I had gotten done, I realized the things on my to-do list were not matching my priorities. Okay, my first priority being God or being a moral person. I looked at the things I'd accomplished and nothing really matched that. I mean, there's nothing on my to-do list or what I'd done about being a better person. My second priority, health. There was almost nothing there to do with health. My third priority, personal finances. Not a lot there either. Matter of fact, I probably had more things that I did that hurt me financially than helped me. So I realized that the things I was actually doing weren't matching what I said my priorities were. Okay, and I think it's important for us all to work on things that match what we say our priorities are. It keeps us balanced mentally. I think when we're constantly working on things that we don't consider priorities, then it's draining. But when you're working on the things that truly are important to you, then it's rewarding, it's fulfilling, you feel better about yourself and life in general. Well, getting back to the keystone activities, I realized that there were some activities that really fit in with my priorities. Okay, and gardening's a perfect example. All right, my first priority is being a moral person, or God. And gardening doesn't make you a moral person, but I really think it helps you get in touch with God. You're in nature, you're appreciating His creations and life in general by trying to get plants to grow and live and thrive. And going back to the Bible, Genesis, it says God created man to tend the garden. Okay, so our initial purpose was literally to be gardeners, if you believe in the Bible. So there's something fulfilling there about doing what our initial purpose actually was, which is gardening. Okay, my second priority, health. Gardening is extremely healthy. You get the actual physical work of gardening, but along with that, you get the work of maintaining the garden throughout the season. You get the work of, harvesting what you've grown. So you're getting, physical exercise there. But you're also eating healthier. So it's not just the exercise, but it's also eating healthier because you're eating healthy things. You're eating things God intended us to eat. You're eating vegetables and fruits straight from the garden. They're right. They're as healthy as they can be. They're chemical free if you choose to go that route, and you have that option when you do gardening. You can go completely organic. Okay, so that's a huge plus health-wise. That fits wonderfully with my second priority. Okay, my third priority, finances. Hey, gardening helps with that. My biggest expense at the moment's groceries, food. Our biggest single expense every month. And if done right, gardening can significantly help you financially. And I'm saying if done right because you can go buying, gadgets and spend money, and you can make gardening expensive. But again, if you do it right and are mindful about what you're doing, it can save you a lot of money. And then my fourth priority is just quality of life. And the reason I throw that in there, you can get so hung up on finances, for example, that you end up hurting your quality of life. We all know the people that are so cheap that, they refuse to spend money on anything, including things that they would really enjoy. Well, I don't want to get to that point. You have to manage your finances, and you have to be responsible, but at the same time, you still got to enjoy life. Okay, well, gardening really helps out with quality of life because you're eating such great tasting fruits and vegetables. You can't get vegetables from the grocery store that taste as good as what you grow. Some more so than others, like tomatoes, for example. You'll never get a tomato from the grocery store that tastes as good as a homegrown tomato. All right, so that's one example of a keystone activity for me that fit in with all my priorities and helps bring a balance to my life. Well, hunting's another one of those keystone activities. Okay, hunting for me is right back to being in touch with nature. I feel closer to God when I'm hunting. Okay, and I know there's some people that will have problems with the actual killing of animals, and there's that part of it, and that is part of it. But that's also part of nature, and so often we think of ourselves as separate from nature, but we're not. We're part of nature. And just like we have the seasons. Well, those seasons apply to everything. There's birth, there's growth, there's decline, and finally there's death. And we're all going to go through that process as well. We're going to experience those seasons. The deer that we hunt are going to experience those seasons. And it's not the most pleasant thing, but it is part of life. So, hunting reminds you of that. It makes you appreciate what you have and makes you appreciate the abundance in nature. Okay, and then there's the health aspects of it. Okay, I'm deer hunting. There's nothing healthier than venison. It doesn't have quite enough fat content, because they're extremely lean. But as far as protein, wonderful source of protein. And hey, if you want to talk about organic grass-fed, meat, it doesn't get any better than venison. There's no chemicals there. It's healthy. Plus all the exercise you get that goes along with that. And there is a lot of work and exercise that go into hunting. All right, my third priority, finances. Hunting can really help with that. Again, my single biggest expense monthly is groceries. Well, getting free meat, I ain't gonna say free, but definitely a lot less expensive than what you pay in the grocery store. That helps out significantly. But again, there's a warning. You can spend a lot there. Okay, and I'm gonna really get into that in just a second because that's really important to understand. But finally, there's also quality of life. And eating game that you harvested, that's to me a huge plus as far as quality of life. You're fully aware of what you're doing when you eat that animal. You know an animal had to die to provide you that food. Okay, and that's in all cases with meat. When you go to get a hamburger, a cow had to die to, provide that to you. It's just you don't have to see it at a, fast food place or the grocery store. But that's the truth, and that's why I also say hunting is honest, because you're aware of that truth, whereas so many aren't. So from a quality of life standpoint, I think that awareness, it makes you appreciate what you have. So to me, it helps improve your quality of life. And in my own personal case, I'm allergic to beef, pork, and lamb. So if I want red meat, it's pretty much wild game and venison mostly. So that's a huge part of quality of life for me. And I'm not saying we need a ton of red meat in our diet, but we do need some. And I'm here to tell you, you do miss it when you go without it for long enough. All right, so hunting is a keystone activity for me. It fits in with all my priorities. And I thoroughly enjoy it. It's something I've always done. I've been fortunate enough to do it my entire life. So anyways, it is part of life for me. And it's been a part of life for so many generations before us. It's part of what it is to be human. And I think that's why it fits in so well with so many of our, or at least my priorities. It's natural that it would fit with my priorities if my priorities are what they should be. Okay, but here's the warning that goes with all that. It is so easy to get caught up in the commercialism of everything we do. Good examples, again, is hunting. There's no end to what you can spend hunting. And I say commercialism, that's a small part of it, but just, I guess, human nature. We can use our activities to justify things that make no sense. We turn these things into sports. Okay, hunting today, there's a big trend of scoring the antlers. How many inches of antlers are there? And they have formulas for calculating this. And the younger guys can look at a deer's antlers and say, that's this many points. And the bigger the antlers, the more points. Okay, so you end up with people that they're not hunting for the right reasons. They're hunting for points now. And whoever wins, kills the deer with the most points wins or something, I guess. And that's human nature. And I understand that. I love hunting big deer myself. I can't tell you how to score one, but there is something special about hunting big deer because of the challenge. But it is so easy, though, to get lost in that and lose track of the other things. And I'm saying all this because this is something I constantly have to work on myself. It's easy for me to get caught up in all that. So that's I'm always struggling with, why am I doing this? And is this going to help me? Is this going to fit in with my priorities? Okay, I would love to join a hunting club that manages their deer population, and they've got giant monster deer walking around. But is that going to help? Is that going to match up with my priorities? And the answer is no. Killing a big deer is special because they're extremely smart. But it's only special if you put the work in. If you put the effort in and you figure out that deer and you work to make that happen. If you're just showing up shooting deer, and kind of to expand on that, I'm in the Southeast, and our deer just aren't as big as deer out in the Midwest or up north. So a lot of hunters go out to the Midwest or up north just to hunt big trophy deer. Well, to me, a big deer here, a really big deer in this area, it would not be considered a big deer out in the Midwest or up north, but it's still a trophy to me because I killed it in this area. So it's all relative. If that's what's big here, and that's a smart, wise old deer, and I was fortunate enough to take that deer, well, that's a trophy. And that deer still gave up his life for me so that I can eat and that deer is special. I don't have to go out west to get a giant. I can do that here and be a lot more proud of what I was able to do here than if I went out west doing that, because then that's getting away from my priorities. Okay, and that's why I hunt. I know that's not for everybody. It doesn't fit up with everybody's priorities, but it does for me and my priorities. And another reason I wanted to get into all of that is because there's a lot of things I do that go against my priorities, and great example of that's the shooting and guns and all that stuff. And I'm going to have more shooting stuff on my channel. That's something I enjoy, but that's also something I have to be really careful about personally. It's so easy for me to say, okay, I can go buy this gun and use hunting to justify buying that gun. Well, truth is, I don't need any more guns. I don't have a whole lot of guns, but I've got a couple. And let me explain this too. Guns are something I just really enjoy. I've always enjoyed guns. I've always been fascinated with them, and mostly because they're a tool used for hunting. But I also have just a huge appreciation for the aesthetics of guns and the design of them, the evolution of firearms, the accuracy. There's so many things about them that's appealing. The different uses different people had at different times, which led to all the various designs. Okay, but the downside is, okay, collecting guns, for example, that goes against my priorities. Okay, collecting guns doesn't help me financially. In fact, it hurts me. There's no physical activity there. I'm not getting any physical benefit from doing that. And I need all the benefit I can get. I've put on 30 pounds in the last year. So I'm looking forward to deer season just to help with that. But the reloading that I do for guns to get them to shoot as accurately as I can get them to shoot, well, most of that's not necessary. It's time spent that I could have been doing other things. Okay, but I do enjoy guns, and I do enjoy learning about them and becoming more knowledgeable about them and shooting more accurately, and you know, the history behind them and so forth. So I'm going to do more gun videos, but I wanted to really make sure I pointed out the downside of them also. And this was a huge reminder for me to not get caught up, not lose track of my priorities. Guns are a great hobby, and you know, again, I've always loved them. When I was in high school, some kids played football, some kids played baseball. I was on the rifle team. I mean, I've just always loved guns, rifles in particular. But it's a hobby, and I have to make sure I stay aware of that, and I have to keep a balance there. I can't lose track of my priorities pursuing that hobby. And the same is true of hunting, but hunting, again, that is something I can justify spending the time on it, in that there's so many benefits I get from it. All right, but I have to make sure I don't lose track of those benefits. I can't get caught up in spending too much money on guns to say it's for hunting, when realistically you don't even have to have a gun to go hunting. You can kill a deer with a sharp pointed stick. I mean, there's archery guys that do it all the time with bow and arrows. So I can't use that as a way to justify just, you know, spending money. Because you really can't justify that. the more you spend on hunting, generally the more you're getting away from the positive benefits. I could get a four-wheeler and join a hunting club and make it easy to get the deer out and easy for me to get to my hunting spot. But then I've gotten away from the exercise. Okay, then I've gotten away from managing my finances because I just spent a lot of money on something that I'm going to use 5 or 6, 10 times a year. And that's, you know, assuming I actually used it to ride into my spot, which I probably wouldn't. If I had a four-wheeler, it would probably be just to bring a deer out. And I don't see any reason to kill more than 3 or 4 deer in a year. So I would spend all that time and money getting this thing, a four-wheeler, that I have to maintain. I have to have a place to store it. I have to have a trailer to haul it. I have to do all these things so that I could use it 4 times a year. Maybe a few more times helping a friend or something. I mean, and that's what I mean by it's so easy to lose track of the priorities. And then I'm not getting all the exercise, so it's not helping me. Whereas hunting is, so long as I keep my priorities in mind. Now, as I was saying before the camera so rudely stopped working on me, the reason I felt the need to get into all of this is because I really worked hard on my guns this year, and I learned a lot. And I wanted to share that with y'all because there's not much information out there on rifles as it relates to just normal hunting. Okay, most of what's out there is either tactical stuff or long range hunting, and there's not much for just normal hunting. And I've learned a lot this year, worked on my guns a lot, learned a lot in the process, and I want to share that with y'all. But a lot of what I learned and did and worked on really isn't a personal benefit, at least for me, in terms of my priorities. Okay, so when I do stuff on guns, I don't want anybody to get too caught up in the guns and lose track of what your priorities are. And I'm doing this as a reminder to myself so that I don't lose track of what my priorities are, because it is so easy to do. I spent a lot more than I would have I spent a lot more this year than I probably should have, at least from a financial standpoint. And yes, I did buy a new rifle this summer. Got me a 270. Plus, I've been working on a couple others I've had for several years that I never took the time to put the work into them to get them right, or I didn't have the time until this year. So I did a lot of shooting this summer and I learned a lot. And, I got away from my priorities. That's time I could have spent on other projects that I need to be doing around the house and that type of thing. And I've got a ton of projects. So I guess you just have to find a balance. That's what it all comes down to. I thoroughly enjoyed the stuff I learned this year. So yeah, I'll be sharing some of that with y'all. But just keep in mind that I'm not suggesting anyone else get caught up in all the shooting and the guns and so forth. And if you do, keep things in perspective while you're doing it. You don't have to have a super accurate gun to kill deer. I'm not suggesting that in the least. You don't have to have an expensive gun to kill deer. You don't have to have a new gun. You don't have to have $1,000 scope on it. That's part of why I want to do the gun videos, is because so much of the information out there now is so contrary to, you know, I don't want to say the truth, but it's getting away from a lot of knowledge a lot of hunters had for years and years, that, you know, now things are getting confused, which is kind of ironic. We're in the information age, and it seemed like we'd have figured all this out by now. But, you know, a great example is I keep hearing people say you need to spend twice as much on your scope as your optics as you do your rifle. Folks, that ain't true. I mean, I don't know where that came from, but that's absolutely so far from the truth it ain't even funny. Now, if you're shooting 1,000 yards, okay, then that's probably true. All right, but the overwhelming majority of us are not shooting 1,000 yards. You know, if we shoot 300 yards, that was a really, really long shot. And most of us have no business whatsoever trying to shoot 300 yards, because most of us have never practiced at 300 yards. And for me, 300 yards is my max, and that just depends on what gun. And that's where knowing your maximum point blank range comes in, and I'll get into that later on too, because that's something a lot of hunters need to understand. But anyway, I just wanted to share all this because I don't want to be a bad influence. Okay, and it's exciting to see, you know, the gun stuff, but that's the least important stuff. It's just, you know, hey, we enjoy it. I do, and if you're watching a gun video, you probably do too. But even though we enjoy it, you know, it's still probably the least important thing in terms of hunting. The most important thing is getting out there and doing your scouting and just being in the woods. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. And hopefully this afternoon I'm going to get back to the range. I'm going to try to film that, wrap up a couple of projects that I've been working on. Hopefully, you know, 2 rifles I'm going to carry this afternoon are right. And then, anyway, we're wrapping it all up and getting ready for hunting season now. It's opening day for muzzleloaders a week and 2 days from now. And I'm fixing to get back to getting all my stuff together. So y'all have a good day.